Elias Cole had built his life on quiet. His ranch lay far from the nearest town, pressed up against red hills and open sky, where the wind whispered more often than people did. He was known as a shy man, the kind who tipped his hat instead of speaking, who kept his eyes low and his thoughts to himself. After his parents died, silence became his companion. It never judged him. It never demanded courage. That evening, the sky darkened without warning. Heavy clouds rolled in, bruised with thunder, and the air grew sharp and restless. Elias was closing the barn when he noticed movement at the far edge of his land. A single rider emerged from the dust, cutting through the wind as if driven by something stronger than exhaustion. As she drew closer, he saw she was a woman, her posture proud, despite the way her horse stumbled beneath her. The animal collapsed just beyond the fence line, sending the rider tumbling into the dirt. Elias froze, fear rooting him in place. People meant trouble. Strangers meant choices he wasn't good at making. But when the woman tried to rise and failed, clutching her side, instinct overtook hesitation. He ran to her, heart pounding harder than the thunder overhead. She wore Apache buckskin, torn and darkened with blood near her ribs. An arrow wound, old but dangerous. Her face was calm, almost defiant, even as pain tightened her jaw. When their eyes met, Elias expected anger or suspicion. Instead, he saw exhaustion and resolve. "I need shelter," she said, her voice low but steady. "Only for the night." He nodded before he could think. Inside the cabin, the storm broke loose. Rain hammered the roof as Elias cleaned the wound with shaking hands, apologizing under his breath. She watched him closely, silent, as if learning something about him with every movement. Her name was Naya. She spoke it simply, like a fact, not an invitation. When the fire was lit and the pain eased, the room settled into a quiet unlike any Elias had known. It wasn't empty, it was full of her presence, of the steady rhythm of her breathing, of the sense that something had crossed into his world and refused to leave unchanged. As thunder rolled across the hills, Elias realized the silence he had built. His life around had been broken, and for the first time, he wasn't sure he wanted it back. Morning light crept through the cabin window, soft and pale, touching the rough wooden walls and the quiet forms within. Elias woke before the sun fully rose, a habit shaped by years of ranch life, and for a moment he forgot she was there. Then he heard her breathing, steady, calm, and the memory returned all at once. Naya lay resting on a blanket near the fire, her dark hair loosened from its braid, her face peaceful in sleep. Elias looked away quickly, heat rising to his cheeks, and moved outside to start the day. When he returned with water and bread, she was already awake, sitting upright despite the pain in her side. She thanked him with a nod rather than words, accepting the food as if it were an exchange between equals. They shared the morning in near silence. Elias tended the horses and Naya sat on the porch, carefully repairing her saddle with practiced hands. Though neither spoke much, they were aware of each other in every small movement, as if the space between them had grown charged with meaning. Later, as the sun climbed higher, Naya finally spoke. She told him she was traveling between Apache camps. Carrying news meant only for elders. Her journey had been long and others had tried to stop her. She did not explain why, and Elias did not ask. He understood secrets. He had lived with his own for years. Instead, he listened, and that alone seemed to surprise her. By midday, riders from town passed along the distant trail. Their eyes lingered when they saw Naya on the porch. Elias felt his chest tighten, the old fear rising again. But before he could step forward, Naya met their stares without flinching. There was strength in her stillness, and the men eventually rode on, unsettled and silent. Elias realized then that danger did not always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it came in glances and assumptions. That evening, they sat by the fire as the sky turned gold and then deep blue. Elias finally found the courage to speak, telling her how he had chosen this land to avoid people, how quiet had become his shield. Naya listened the way one listens to truth, without interruption. When he finished, she studied him for a long moment. "You hide," she said gently, "but you are not weak." The words settled deep in Elias's chest, heavier than praise, warmer than comfort. No one had ever seen him that clearly. As the fire crackled between them, Elias felt something unfamiliar growing, a sense that sharing a space did not always mean losing yourself. Sometimes it meant being found. The third night brought with it a tension that Elias could feel in his bones. The land seemed restless, the horses uneasy, stamping and snorting as darkness settled over the ranch. Naya noticed it too. She stood at the edge of the porch, eyes scanning the open plain, her hand resting near the knife at her belt. She said nothing, but the warning was clear. They were not alone. Just before dusk, riders appeared on the trail, 3 men at first, then 2 more, spreading out as they approached. They were not soldiers nor ranchers passing through. Their clothes were worn, their faces hard, their eyes fixed on the cabin. Elias's heart pounded as fear surged through him, the old instinct to retreat screaming in his mind. But when one of the men called out, demanding the Apache woman be handed over, something inside Elias refused to bend. He stepped into the doorway, hands shaking, but feet planted. His voice wavered when he spoke, yet the words held. She was under his roof. She was not leaving. The men laughed, mocking the shy rancher who barely met their eyes. But they did not move closer. Naya came to stand beside him, her presence steady, her gaze sharp with surprise and something like gratitude. The moment shattered when a shot rang out. Chaos followed in a blur of sound and motion. Elias felt a burning pain tear across his shoulder as he stumbled backward. Naya pulled him inside, her hands firm as she pressed cloth to the wound, her voice low and urgent as she urged him to stay awake. Outside, the men shouted, then retreated, unwilling to press their luck further. When silence finally returned, it felt heavier than before. Elias sat on the edge of the bed, pale and shaking, while Naya cleaned the blood from his skin with care. Her hands were gentle, her focus unbroken. "You did not have to do that," she said quietly. "Yes," he answered, surprised by his own certainty. "I did." Their eyes met, and in that moment fear gave way to trust. Elias realized he had crossed a line he could never step back from. Protecting her had not been an accident or a moment of courage. It had been a choice. As Naya finished tending the wound, she rested her hand briefly against his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palm. That night, as pain and exhaustion pulled Elias toward sleep, he understood that the man who once hid from the world was gone. In his place stood someone willing to stand, even when it hurt, even when it cost him his peace. Dawn arrived quietly, pale light spilling over the plains, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Elias woke to the soft sounds of movement and knew, even before he opened his eyes, that the moment had come. His shoulder ached, stiff from the night before, but the deeper pain settled somewhere behind his ribs. Naya was packing her belongings, moving with the calm certainty of someone who had already made her decision. Her horse stood ready outside, healed and strong, a reminder that her path did not linger in one place for long. Elias watched her from the doorway, searching for words that felt large enough. He had spent most of his life letting moments pass, trusting silence to speak for him. Now silence felt like a mistake he could not afford. When she turned to him, her expression softened, and the guarded strength he had first seen was tempered by something gentler. "My journey is not safe," she said. "Where I go, there will be eyes watching. If you choose to walk with me, you leave this quiet behind." Elias looked out at the land he had called home, the fences he had built, the routines that had once kept him safe. None of it felt as solid as it had before. He realized the quiet had not been peace. It had been fear, carefully arranged to look like comfort. He met her gaze, his voice steady despite the weight of his choice. "I've been alone a long time," he said. "I don't want that kind of quiet anymore." Naya studied him, as if listening not just to his words, but to the truth beneath them. Then she mounted her horse and extended her hand toward him. The gesture was simple, but it carried a future he had never imagined for himself. Elias hesitated only a moment before taking it, the warmth of her grip grounding him. They rode out as the sun climbed higher, the ranch shrinking behind them until it became part of the horizon. The road ahead was uncertain, marked by danger and difference. But Elias felt something new guiding him, purpose. He was no longer running from the world. He was stepping into it. As the wind carried the scent of earth and morning, Elias understood that some lives change in a single quiet decision, not with noise or celebration, but with the courage to follow someone who showed you who you could become.